Our next speaker has one of the best presentation titles I've heard in a long time. He's continuously pushing the Cosmos ecosystem forward, a dear friend of ChainSafe's, founder of the Clovers Network and grants manager at Interchain Foundation, Billy Rennekamp, to present Nerd Nights by Cosmos. Billy, why don't you go ahead and turn on your mic and camera and join me on the main stage. Hey, Billy, how are you doing today?
Good. Is that working? That
is working. Awesome. Can I get some clap emojis in the chat, please? Awesome. All right, Billy, stage is all yours.
All right, let me see how this works. Does that show up? It looks like it shows up. Okay, cool. So my name is Billy Rennekamp, and my talk is called Nerd Sniped by Cosmos, not Nerd Night, but I was asked to talk about whatever I want. So of course I decided to talk about myself. So about me, my handle on most platforms is okay with me. That's okay with me, not Aquame. I'm an artist and an engineer. I'm originally from Louisville, Kentucky, which is the home place of bluegrass music, bourbon whiskey, and thoroughbred horse races. I'm the founder of Clovers Network, a network for the creation of scarce art, and I'm the grants manager at the Interchain Foundation. More about me. I've been working around the Cosmos ecosystem for about 3 years, depending on when you count the start. You might say that it was in 2017 when I participated in the second Hack Atom, got 3rd place. I'm going to drop my camera because I don't think you all need to look at me during this. It's all about me anyways. You've gotten enough of me. Oh, I guess it doesn't go away. I was actually using it, the very first version of Ethermint, which ChainSafe is working on. Really, it was an excuse, though, to learn Solidity because I was just really excited about Ethereum. So Clovers was this project I built. It's an artwork. I'd like to pat myself on the back a moment because it was one of the first implementations of NFTs, I think. CryptoPunks came out right in the middle of me developing this, but I was calling them visual digital assets. So this is a bit of historical information for you. But this became a real lens for me to all of the really exciting things going on in the blockchain space because Ethereum had finally become, good enough. I had checked it out back in like 2015, and it was just like unbelievably complicated to use Bitcoin colored coins. Ethereum was really sort of just emerging. But 2017, Solidity got to the point. You had MetaMask. There was really sort of like finally good enough for people to start doing things, and you saw this real kind of explosion of topics. Experiments. I got really excited about bonding curves, market makers, NFTs, RFTs, DAOs. I was really excited about, and still am, Ethereum name service, oracles, and especially like clever solutions for minimizing on-chain and gas consumption. But the space really was great for rapid iteration. There was no barrier to entry beyond the time it took to really understand what the hell was going on. The problem, of course, being that if you had any real degree of success or adoption, you'd immediately make your app unusable as the network wouldn't be able to handle it, which we saw with CryptoKitties. So somewhere in 2018, I began properly working on Cosmos, albeit just part-time. I was part of the Voyager team, which was later renamed Looney. It's a Vue.js web-based wallet that was the flagship open source wallet for the Cosmos ecosystem. I was keeping it part-time though, so I could keep doing these projects in the Ethereum space, working on other companies like Aragon and Gnosis, and continue to build Clovers Network. When I was working on the Voyager team, it was pretty normal to be chasing the release cycle of the Cosmos SDK. Breaking changes were the norm, and it was kind of like trying to hit a moving target. But at some point, things started to stabilize on the SDK, and they were really picking up speed in the ecosystem. This brought us to the launch of the Cosmos Hub in 2019. Other teams began actually building using the SDK in earnest, launching their own chains. And it seemed like Cosmos was kind of entering that just good enough moment. Of course, we were still missing, that critical piece of the entire thesis, which was IBC. This is really the crown jewel of the vision for the Internet of blockchains. Because the thesis of Cosmos is really that application-specific blockchains allow scalability and provide the sovereignty that's missing from all of these shared computation networks. It doesn't matter what language or framework you build your application in. The Cosmos SDK is a great one, and Tendermint is the gold standard, we like to think, of PBFT and proof of stake. But that's not as important as what connects all of these heterogeneous application-specific blockchains together. They miss out on that like compounding value of composability without the interoperability. And that's where IBC comes in. This gives it the ability for these sovereign independent blockchains to communicate with each other and to trigger functions on each other, to execute transactions on each other, and to read state from each other. Back to me. August 2019, I'm still doing part-time work and focusing fully on the mainnet launch of Clovers. You know, it's this weird art game. It has these esoteric ideas about value, and it's meant to be weaponized with these market mechanics meant to convince strangers to spend their time basically watching cloud-like images pass by. Still, as weird as it is, it topped the gas charts for weeks surrounding the launch. However, in the coming months, gas prices just climbed to ungodly prices. So what little success I did see was immediately throttled by the infrastructure underneath. So the game is still live, Clovers.network, and it's played by a handful of true believers. It's experimental and exciting, but it's ultimately limited by the structure that made it possible in the first place. So I turned my attention to full-time to solving the problem at hand. I began working as a developer relations engineer at Tendermint and focusing on making this tech accessible, bringing it into the hands of the people who are ready for this just good enough software. But this just good enough was actually hitting a stride, and the whole package started really making sense to me. I taught myself Golang and built my first Cosmos SDK module. This was the NFT module. I come from a background in model view controller web development, so I actually loved the architecture. It's also a lot like a reducer mutation paradigm in React and Vuex. So everything has its proper place and purpose, and then you put it all together and you can design an application that does whatever you want. So it was a bit like the first time launching a full-fledged web application for me, where I realized like I could actually build anything that I wanted, which was a crazy feeling. Deploying code also felt good from a web development perspective because you're really just pushing code to a server and running the application there. It doesn't really matter if it's a single validator. It's really the same security assumption that Ruby on Rails provides, but still has data integrity, transparency of operation, and access to participation. But anyways, it especially doesn't matter while you're just iterating on your application to figure out what it actually does. So this also really changed how it felt to build a blockchain application. It's not like building a blockchain or a smart contract. It's really like building an app, which is completely different. Anyways, all of this was part of a real like swelling of good enough that ran through 2019. This coincided with a huge year in Cosmos where we saw all of these amazing firsts. Prior to the launch was the very first incentivized testnet called Game of Stakes. The first Cosmos SDK version of Ethermint built by ChainSafe. This is the EVM module that's for the Cosmos SDK that makes it easy to build proof of stake Ethereum. The first SDK version of Peggy, which is an Ethereum bridge module, came from Swish Labs. This allowed transfers to and from Ethereum. I actually used it at the ETH Denver hackathon and moved these ERC20 prize money onto a burner chain that had these riddles. Users submitted answers directly to the burner chain, and then in order to move the asset back to the origin chain, they used Peggy. 2019 also saw the birth of CosmWasm during the Berlin Hackathon. This is the WASM virtual machine for Rust-based smart contracts built by Confio. And at that same hackathon, we saw the first implementation of subkeys, which are a topic that are very dear to me. This opens up the ability to have all the features of smart contract wallets that you'd see in Ethereum. It's where specific keys can be set with specific permissions on a per message basis, which allows you to like rotate the keys regularly, which is common security practice, as well as do social recovery. And we saw the first versions of IBC becoming available. Officially, this was at the SF Blockchain Week, but we saw a proto version even at the Hackathon Seoul that summer, where the very first staking derivatives implementation called B-Atoms was from a team that part of that team eventually went on to create interchain accounts, which I'll talk about in a minute, and the browser-based wallet Kepler. Anyways, if 2019 was this year of first, then 2020 has been this year of maturity. The incentivized testnet of testnets, Game of Zones, was earlier this year, where we got to see a network of networks for the very first time connected via IBC. ChainSafe is building towards a launch of Ethermint as a zone itself, not just as a module that anybody can use. This is going to realize part of the vision of the photon, which was previously discussed, as well as Ethereum with on-chain governance. Peggy has reached new highs of production integrity as Althea network has marched on towards a mainnet launch of the Ethereum bridge. This will eventually make its way onto the Cosmos hub itself. So there's a direct bridge for Ethereum assets as well as atoms on Ethereum. So in that scenario, you could imagine buying atoms on Uniswap and then moving them back to the hub to stake them on a validator to earn rewards. Cosmwasm from Confio, the one that came from that hack atom, has matured into one of the fastest growing technologies in the space and will launch its own blockchain imminently. Every week, there's like a slew of new features from them, like staking derivatives, subkeys themselves, IBC in a virtual machine environment, as well as the company Confio is building the mature JavaScript library called Cosm.js. Subkeys have become augmented by something called interchain accounts through work done by Chain Access, the team building the Kepler wallet. The first interchain standard actually after IBC token transfers that allows a blockchain to hold a balance on another blockchain. So this is a bit like smart contracts in Ethereum there's no way to like distinguish them between users, or there's some ways, but anyways, any chain can basically become a DAO to collectively manage an account on another blockchain. This is also a path to staking derivatives. Starport has been a big part of this year. This is a first-class scaffolding tool to make building Cosmos SDK chains as easy as Create React or Ruby on Rails. This work from Tendermint is massively simplifying the developer experience of building with the SDK. Next up for them is actually providing a path for deploying these so that it feels like Heroku or Netlify as soon as you're ready to start deploying the work that you've done. 2020 has also been a lot about many mainnets. At last count, there are 60 mainnets built with Cosmos SDK and Tendermint, including Band, Binance, Crypto.com, eMoney, HBTC, Iris, IXO, Kava, Matic, MikroTik, Oasis, Pocket, Secret, Starname, Terra, who's topping the charts actually in terms of transactions per day with the impressive adoption that they've seen in the Korean market. Altogether, there's over $5 billion secured by these networks. And we saw Agoric release their alpha. So this is secure JavaScript smart contracts with DeFi primitives baked in that's going to expose the largest group of developers in the world to building blockchain apps. Kepler, the wallet I mentioned earlier, as well as Wallet Connect, the protocol, and Looney Light is creating a path to enabling wallets that have permissionless access to every blockchain. So that means wallets are no longer a bottleneck to providing access to applications. It's not like they have to get manually built in. We've also seen huge contributions to privacy and scaling. NIM and Lazy Ledger have joined our ecosystem to bring easy access to zero knowledge capabilities and roll-up scaling with a solution to the data availability problem. We've also seen automatic market makers and bonding curves, my favorite. So a suite of modules from IXO that provides both the constant product market formula like you see on Uniswap, as well as continued issuance with slope formula bonding curves. bHarvest is making progress on an advanced version of Uniswap as well, their constant product formula that will be deployed to the hub itself, the Cosmos hub. Best of all, both of these software suites utilize front-running prevention that makes sure that the minor extractable value that doesn't repeat the problems we're seeing in the Ethereum's like dark forest. Staking derivatives, I think I've mentioned these a few times, but earlier this year we saw this exhaustive report from Chorus One that made it clear what an important primitive this is to ensuring a diverse set of validators and opening up a potentially kind of explosive set of DeFi capabilities. Confio's already built this prototype into their Cosmwasm platform. And like I said, interchain accounts from Chain Access also makes this possible. But we expect to see kind of a plan for bringing these to market, maybe even on the Cosmos Hub from Unified DAO in 2021. If you're not familiar with the concept of staking derivatives, it's one of any variety of techniques that allow a locked asset like stake in a proof of stake system to be made transferable through some form of derivative. So in the example of ETH2, where we're seeing all these researchers coming to the same conclusion that users want to still use their ETH, even if it's locked in a staking operation, that they're coming to these sort of same conclusions and same designs that we've been iterating in the Cosmos space because of the sort of staking that we've had running for a long time. The the quote, staking is DeFi, I think gets extended with staking derivatives. Staking is DeFi, then staking derivatives is essentially exponential DeFi. But what's really been important is bridges. So, this is an internet of blockchains. This is all about interoperability. As Aiden said earlier, none of this is going to succeed if it's a zero-sum idea. So we've been able to collaborate with tons of other projects. Web3 Foundation has co-funded work on an IBC inside a substrate. This would ultimately make it possible to use the Substrate SDK without being necessarily beholden to the Polkadot ecosystem or economic system. You can run your own validator set and use IBC to connect to any blockchain that you want. This work has been shepherded from Chorus One and CDOT. Celo Foundation is also co-funding a bridge being built by Chorus One. Zcash Foundation has been doing research on extending their shielded pool to a peg zone. Bitcoins are coming from multiple sources, actually. Various DEXs are implementing them, as well as CosmWasm, as I mentioned before. There's an SDK module built by Sumo One that allows you to do this. Orga is a Rust-based SDK and team building a Bitcoin bridge. And there's also Ethereum itself. I mean, now that there's all of these wrapped Bitcoins on Ethereum, they could come over via the Peggy bridge or via ChainSafe's bridge and be part of this internet of blockchains. Of course, all of this is really leading up to IBC, which is part of the Stargate release and the Cosmos SDK. This is the release that will go into the Cosmos Hub upgrade to complete really the foundation for this internet of blockchains. I think we're on the 5th release candidate, so it's like so close. The final test nets are running right now. This simulates the actual hub upgrade. This is what really takes us far beyond good enough and brings us really to it's time to build. Back to me. So my life is pretty different now from when I was working as an artist, just playing around with whatever seemed like most interesting at the moment. This is an example of my typical week's calendar, but Cosmos quickly became what was most interesting at the moment. And as the grants manager at the Interchain Foundation now, Interchain Foundation being the entity responsible for funding development of all the Cosmos network and the internet of blockchains, I get to dip into every one of these crazy, exciting topics and work with all of these really talented teams. But that means my day is filled mostly with calls, checking in on all these topics and projects. So if I were you or anyone who had a minute more of spare time, what I would be doing actually is I'd be building. I go out there and just play with this stuff. There's so many things that are becoming possible finally. Build a burner chain that has like low security so you can just iterate on these experiments. A single validator on DigitalOcean is all you need. Do stupid stuff. One dream I have is just like taking an atom and moving it via IBC to like 3 different chains and just doing that over and over again, like a million times, wrapping up this atom so that the IBC path is like a mile long. It'd be like a bouncy ball that's covered in a million rubber bands. Like the task to unwind it again wouldn't be worth the gas cost compared to like the beauty of such a weird atom. Go hard on subkeys. Find out what it takes to truly get rid of the UX barrier to private key management without sacrificing the security. This is the sort of per key permissions. Push for disposable keys, real OAuth, social recovery, and mixed custodial help is something that I think is totally underexplored. Imagine if it's not other people holding your recovery keys, but like let companies build businesses around it. And don't trust any one of them, but find the right combination between them. Let like the ease of use, access, and security match the needs of your application and not the other way around. Launch a chain as a DAO with your friends. Start making a collective and use governance with Interchain accounts to manage your funds across IBC. You can collectively manage staking rewards. Or build a chain that uses NFTs as the staking token. I don't know what would happen, but I think it could be interesting. Or launch your version of Clover's network. Jump through that hoop and harness, especially the levers that staking gives you while designing your token economics, because you really shouldn't be afraid of those levers. They are superpowers in building these applications. Just go out there and play with this stuff because there's so much that you can build and it's really up to you to do it.
Awesome, Billy. Thank you so much. You have such an interesting story and an amazing journey. Thank you so much for sharing and inspiring others to go out and build. Definitely go out and build. That's 100%. We do have a couple Q&A questions for you. The top question, what was the pivotal moment that you drove to dedicating yourself to the Cosmos ecosystem?
I think it was when I realized I could use the Cosmos SDK. I'm like a self-taught programmer, so I have like an inferiority complex all the time. I like don't have a CS degree. I probably couldn't figure out how to do that. I'd never used like strongly typed language until Solidity. And so that was also sort of like, oh, whoa, like I can do that. And like, I can think about where storage is pointing in the machine. And then I finally sort of like opened up the hood on the Cosmos SDK. It also coincided with a new abstraction in the way it was built around modules. So modules became sort of a little bit closer to this like model view controller idea where there's like a place for everything to go. It makes it a little more accessible, I think. And so I was like, that timed with me finally taking a look and I was like, oh, I can build blockchains. Like I don't have to like fit myself into the virtual machine. I could build an actual blockchain. That's crazy. I think that was probably the moment.
That's awesome. Yeah, definitely. Next question we have here. How are you solving the dark forest problem? What would you say to that?
I mean, the dark forest problem is many faceted, and I wouldn't say that it's being solved entirely, but the idea of minor extractable value is a big part of the dark forest problem. And when you have batch transactions, for instance, inside of DEXs, which is what's going into those automatic market makers I was talking about, it makes it so that you can't sort of front run or accelerate a transaction with just a high gas fee to reproduce somebody else's gain. Those transactions get batched in a certain way so that it doesn't matter which order you came in, you still sort of have the same expected result. And so that'll go a long way to helping alleviate the dark forest problem.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Two more questions. This one from Jack. The state of Cosmos wallets is in flux right now. Gavin did some investigating recently. There is a Twitter link. What do you view as the future of the Cosmos wallet ecosystem?
So I've been sitting on this blog post for like a month trying to finalize edits on it, but it's exactly this. I've thought a lot about it. And I think that wallets have been, to date, trying to do everything at once, and it's been okay because they need to do a lot, but they don't actually need to do that much to sort of serve the full suite. But as like an actual internet of blockchains emerges, if you can imagine that you needed a special interface for every single website out there in order to use PayPal or something like that, it's absurd. As that takes place, you have to imagine that these sort of like responsibilities are eventually going to have to get split out. So I've been thinking about the duty of a wallet really like doing some part application interface, like just showing a token balance and showing tokens and being able to send tokens. Those are like features of an application. So that is sort of expected that a wallet does that. Some wallets do more than that, like Argent, is getting all sorts of integrated application interface to it. The benefit of that is that it's a much better user experience because it's tightly integrated. But there's a huge bottleneck to adding those new features. They have to go through that team every time. At the far other end, there's just the duty of like private key storage, which is really hard. Cryptography, strong cryptography, doing these in secure manners. There's like entire security industries and they take extreme specialization to sort of do it well as like cutting edge new techniques, with Shamir secret sharing and things like that. Taurus is really doing great things, or ZenGo, there's all these sort of like advanced technologies that are themselves a product. So it's one thing to be able to do that and like deliver a nice wallet. So I imagine there should be a separation of like just storing keys. And within that, actually, there should be custodial. A bank can store one of your keys. It doesn't have to be the one key that rules your entire life, but maybe it's one of like a recovery key that you need, 3 of 7 of, or 3 of 5 or whatever. And so I think that there should be sort of this middle ground, which is a wallet. And the wallet is essentially coordinating where all of your keys are stored, keeping track of what they do, helping you like remember that, oh, it's time to like rotate that key or something like that. And then the other side is the applications, really let the applications be applications and use a protocol a bit the way like Web3 works, just to communicate to this sort of what's really an identity provider. It keeps track of your entire history of interactions. It doesn't actually store your keys, you know what I mean? But it can collect all of the metadata you need about yourself, all of the interactions you've ever had on any network, keep track of where did you get that key from? Did you pull it from your bank? Did you pull it from your ledger? What capabilities does that key have on what context? Is this key work on Ethereum or whatever? That's like a full-time duty, but there's tons of value in that. And that's really sort of like an identity that you would imagine carrying around to different applications and just like providing the full sort of personal account history. Imagine those three things are all like full-time jobs. And if we could separate them all out, we might be able to accommodate for like a really large version of Internet of Blockchains.
Well, I think I speak for everyone when we say we're very much so looking forward to that blog once it's posted. One more question here. What was one of the main challenges when building the Clovers network in the early days?
Definitely gas. That's why I used Ethernet the first time. I think my first transaction to so Clovers is kind of proof of work. It like you provide this solution to a problem, and it has to be verified on chain. Is this solution valid? And the first time that I ran it, it was 9 million gas to like verify the transaction, and most Ethereum blocks are maxed out at like 7 million gas. So you wouldn't even be able to fit it on mainnet Ethereum if you filled the entire block yourself with that one transaction. So I was like, how do I run my own Ethereum where I can increase the block to 9 million? And that's where I found like Ethernet and sort of started down that road. But then I came up with all sorts of stupid, clever ways to like squeeze transactions into small points. I mean, this was really the name of the game, I think, through 2017 and 18. Like, what are the sort of ninja techniques for decreasing the footprint that actually goes onto the blockchain? Optimistic verification, stuff like that. So I think that was really something that I spent a long time thinking about.
That's awesome. Thank you so much, Billy. It's been an absolute pleasure as always. At this time, I'll ask you to turn off the cam, but not before the chat floods with the clap emojis. There we go. Awesome. All right, take care. Awesome. Thank you so much, everyone. Our next talk will be starting in just under 2 minutes or so. At that time, we'll bring you back into the